Well, hello everyone, welcome. We're here with Rob, and he's going to tell you a lot more about the International Patient Summary and then focusing on implementation. So go ahead when you are ready, Rob. I'll be your moderator. Oh, by the way, I'm Miriam, and I will walk around with the microphone for the questions afterwards.
Thanks, Miriam.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming out to hear a little more about the International Patient Summary. Don't have a whole lot of time. I'll try to go through what I have reasonably quickly. I think before I do, I don't have it in the slides, but I'll mention the other IPS related sessions that have occurred and will be occurring this week. We had an excellent presentation yesterday from James Agnew about the HAPI server and the summary operation, and so you might want to refer back to that if you weren't there or haven't seen that. And we've got coming up immediately after my presentation, Bill Lober's going to talk in more detail about some of the sharing patient summaries and all that, so hopefully it'll be a nice segue. And then tomorrow, Matt Ron's going to talk more about smart health links, and we've got then on Thursday, we've got joint presentation around IPS and IPA, the two kind of twin projects. So look for those, and with that, we'll go ahead and get going here. So a little bit about me. I'm Rob Hausam. I go by Rob, so you can please feel free to call me that. And I am an MD, as you can see. I'm also an engineer, informatics consultant. Got my own little small consulting company. I've been working on IPS things for a long time, and you can see them here. I won't go into all the details of that, but I'm, one of the editors and leaders of the project in HL7, working on the FHIR IG in particular, and the cross-SDO collaboration effort that we have, and the work in ISO on ISO 27269, and I do a few other things around HL7 and particularly with FHIR. So that's a bit about me, and let's talk a little bit about the IPS. If you were here for James' session yesterday, he used basically the slight variation, but IPS just at the outset it's a standard, standardized set of basic clinical data. It's intended to include most of the most important health and care related facts, and it's definitely intended to be a summarized version of a patient's clinical data that will provide health professionals essential information needed for care. That's the general idea, and the statement below kind of fleshes that out a little bit more. It's minimal, non-exhaustive. We're basically saying the patient summary actually is a summary. It's not the entire EHR. It's not a data dump out of your data your repository, your EHR. It doesn't have all the vital signs you ever had for the last 20 years, those kinds of things. It's a summary. It's minimal, non-exhaustive, but it's intended to be broadly applicable. It's especially agnostic, condition independent, so it's not tailored typically to any one of those things, but the idea is to make it readily usable by essentially all clinicians for typically unscheduled care, something we didn't pre-plan. If I get sick here in Minneapolis, the doctors here aren't going to know me, but if I had my IPS handy and they had ability to read it, that might be a really nice thing to have, and we're hoping to get there. So that's what we're working toward. So let's move on. So James also showed this diagram yesterday. It's pretty busy, a lot of things here, but I'll just highlight just a few things. We have the ISO standard up here, kind of at the top of the heap. We consider it the data set standard for IPS. It's it's 27269. It came out of some prior work in Europe. It was the SEN standards and all of that, but we use it as sort of our guiding light, our principle for as we're developing the other standards, which you see below, which are, in HL7, we started with the CDA IG, and then we moved on to the FHIR, and we're focusing mostly on the FHIR these days, but we have both, and we've also got IHE with two standards there, actually, the IPS profile, which covers both CDA and FHIR, and also the sharing of IPS profile, which actually is focused only on FHIR, as you can see. And then we also in the middle have SNOMED and the contributions that they have made with originally the free set and now the IPS terminology, which is a full sub-ontology, which I won't go into any more detail about that right now, but if there are questions, I'd be happy to answer more about that. And I don't see Peter Williams here, but he could talk about that more too, probably. All right, so, and this just highlights the fact that we, working on the IPS, it's really a collaborative effort. It's across multiple standards development organizations, the ones you saw on the previous slide. They're listed here, and this nice diagram kind of trying to illustrate how these things all might, can fit together. So, okay. All right, so, and again, James showed this slide yesterday too, basically, which has the basic content sections of IPS, kind of what we cover. We've got some basic, header information type things, demographics and all of that. And then we have the required sections of medications, allergies, and problems, and then some recommended sections which include kind of important things like immunizations and laboratory diagnostic, other imaging and laboratory test results and other things. And then we got a number of other optional sections. And I wanted to also point out that we have some new sections that we expect to be coming in our next revisions of the IG. And they're going to be published very soon in the second edition of the ISO 27269 standard, sections for alert and patient story. Okay. And here's a place that you can go to get more information on all of this, broader introduction. And this is the one thing that in our short time I was thinking I would try to maybe do a little bit live. Let's see if it will come. Yeah. All right, so this is the actual website here, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. It's got information with different points of view, the patient, healthcare professionals, and others, various topics. And maybe resources we can get to our publications and presentations and videos, multimedia, and some of the tools like the IPS FHIR, which I'll show here a little bit, and other things. So this one real quick. Implementations across the globe might be worth looking at. There's, we need to update this more. So if your country isn't listed here, and they're doing things with IPS, we need to, you'd love to get that updated and get your information added. All right, so IPS has been getting a lot of attention, and particularly this year, since January, there's been, quite significant attention. This is highlighting, all of the things that happened at the HIMSS meeting earlier this year. I wasn't actually there for this. HIMSS isn't one of my actual regular meetings that I go to a lot, but anyway, it sounded like it was very exciting and lots of good interaction there. So it was all really good to hear about. And this slide highlights a bit where we're getting a lot of vendor interest and progress on the IPS. You can see a number of things I will also mention later, but you see Epic is down here at the bottom. They have recently announced that they are going to be supporting IPS. And actually, I don't think this slide has Meditech, but it's also listed on my other slide. They've also done the same, and we got others coming along, and we got some Canadian vendors, Verto, and we got a Netherlands vendor, Drimpy, and of course, Smile. Smile's definitely there, so yeah, and then other folks in discussion. So a lot of activity starting to happen there. We're really happy to see that. And this is highlighting some of the things that we did at the last Connectathon back just a few weeks ago in May in Dallas, the HL7 FHIR Connectathon. And we had some vendor demonstrations, and this basically is from the Verto folks in Canada, and shows some of the things that they were able to do, showing how to create and share IPS patient summary documents. And let's see. And this is something that I'm not going to talk a whole lot about here because Bill is going to be talking about it just very shortly, a bit more about, and then Matt tomorrow about smart health links. There's been a lot of active discussion around this. Certainly the Washington State folks, Bill Lober and his crew, with the WA Verify, I've been doing some great things and showing how we can again have a mechanism for exchanging IPS data and begin. It's part of what I'm trying to get to in this presentation is looking at what are these individual pieces and things that we're working on and we have, and now we can start to put together and start to build some, credible workflows to actually make this real. So that's where we're going. So this is just a couple of slides that I stole from James about from HAPI about IPS generation. Again, HAPI is supporting this now. It looks like I'm going to run out of time here, but got a few minutes. But summary operation and how that works, and so you can ask him or refer to his presentation for more, and you can try it out. He's got a link there how you can generate an IPS instance. And now we'll move on a little bit, kind of where we're going, a little more internationally. The GDHP you see here is, I don't know how many countries, I think it's 33, or maybe I don't have the right number exactly, but it's a number of countries around the world. Then, they have a focus, one stream is focusing on implementation and particularly on IPS. And this was prominent in the G7, a short time ago, particularly, when the UK was leading that recently. And it's been, basically adopted as an aspirational goal for the G7 countries. And then we just, we just had, again at the HL7 meeting last month in Dallas, we had exciting keynote presentation from Brazil about their commitment, and they are the leaders of the G20 right now, and they, talking about, and we had a team from Brazil there, and I'm just highlighting them as one of the examples. Again, there's others you saw, in the international representation, but there's, many countries are starting to focus on this, and so we're really excited to see that. And we've got the WHO involved with the Global Digital Health Certification Network, and there's kind of an exciting thing that they're going to be showing and demonstrating with that here very soon. They're going to be using the IPS with the Hajj migration, and they've got a few countries involved, Indonesia in particular, and then folks traveling to Saudi Arabia. They're going to be testing out the IPS with this. I'm not personally involved in that, but I'm really excited to see how that works, and that's happening this month. I'm not sure even what the dates are, but it's coming right up, so that'll be really exciting to see the results of that. And let's see, a few more final slides here. These are just a list basically of some of the available components. We've already talked about a lot of that. We've got the HRs, different commercial and open source, Epic and Meditech, and others probably are coming. We've got HAPI, as I mentioned, and James's slides you can look at. We've got the smart health links, and IPS creation and access. It's got the University of Washington I mentioned. Also, I didn't mention University of Cyprus. They've been very active as well. And Google's getting in the mix. And anyway, you can follow one of Bill's presentations coming up, like I said. And so we've got other tools, IPS rendering and viewing applications, and one of those is here. These are some links to it. The IPS viewer that we have, it's published on our website that I showed you, and also the links here. But this work was originally done in Argentina, and we got, I think, Diego's still in the room, yep, and Fernando Campos and Alejandro Osornio. He's not here, but based on their work, and we've kind of further used and extended that so we can show IPS, and render it. So that's a good tool. And then we've got mobile apps coming up, and these are some simple screenshots, but I took from on my Android device, which I actually got specifically for using with IPS, but Google has gotten in the mix putting this into the Android SDK. I had a project working on that after DevDays last year, and they made an implementation of it, and this is the rendering of them generating a smart health card and then showing a very simple IPS, basically pulling that in from using the smart health link that they can show, and we're hoping that Apple's going to get in the game here too eventually. I don't have anything definite on that, but we've been talking, and looks like we're getting close, but I think we're doing pretty good here. So let's see. So putting the final pieces together, this is all talking about things. Essentially the focus mostly has been around patient-mediated exchange, and that's what Bill's going to be talking about. And there's some reasons for that. It simplifies the potential infrastructure that you need. it helps to definitely in managing consent and provenance of data probably. If the patient basically is in control, if they own their own data, they can take it with them and they can, give it to whomever they choose, basically. That's the primary idea. But there's also talk about, direct provider-to-provider or system-to-system interactions, and particularly in certain jurisdictions, like the European, cross-border services we'd be using techniques like that. They're not on IPS yet, but they're making a move to FHIR IPS as their next iteration, and there's a whole lot more to come, and I wish I had more time to actually demonstrate in more detail, but hopefully that'll be a presentation for next year that we can actually show this in further detail. So I think that's the main thing here. So the last slides are just, you can contact me, you can give me my email or direct message me on the FHIR Zulip chat, or you can find me at other places too, I'm sure, but those are a couple of good places to go. And I think we're ready for some Q&A. Yeah, I think Mary.
How does this tie in with the notion of a personal medical record?
That's a good question. I think there's kind of a natural relationship and potential tie-in to that, but it's nothing that's defined, say, in the standard or anything like that. I think it's kind of up to folks' creative energy and how they want to connect these things. But essentially, if you have a personal health record, you would imagine, I'm not going to make particularly a whole lot of distinction between a personal health record and a provider-centric health record. But if you have a health record at all, then you can certainly imagine using that that data source as as the feed for generating IPS documents. And so you could. If you somehow have that connected to your HAPI server, for example, or whatever, you could use the summary operation on that or on other services that are going to be made available. So I don't know, I think we'd have to get the personal health record vendors in the game to let them kind of know that this is something that would be of interest, hopefully to the patients who are, have their data there and would start supporting maybe the summary operation or whatever. So that's kind of how I envision it anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Do you regard the IPS as a clinical document, like collected and especially authored by professionals, or is it just a view on some data in a technical system?
It's potentially, I think, if I understand your question completely, I think it's both. I think the typical kind of prototypical idea is that it would be it would be based on data that's in, a health provider's system, so your GP potentially, or your health system that you're part of, you have your HR data, and then you would generate a clinical document based, summary, IPS summary clinical document based on that data that your health provider system has, and that could be, certainly would be attributed to the system and or the specific provider, and certainly could have full provenance around the source of that data and all that, if you want to go that far. But we're kind of leaving that up to implementations as to what's the most useful way to do this. I mean, once you get it in the patient's hands and it's on your mobile device, some of the details of that may not need to be, like detailed provenance or whatever may not really be necessary. If you give it to the provider, or make it accessible to them, then, it'd be just same as you telling them things, but maybe you're not having to rely on your memory. You've got a nice record of it right here. So that's one idea anyway. Yeah.
So last quick question.
Yeah, Dave.
Can you elaborate on what patient story is? You talk about alerts and patient story. What's patient story?
Yeah, this is a request that's come up on a number of from a number of places, particularly out of the work that was done in the UK. Their community felt that there was a need for the patient to be able to include information in the IPS that's essentially from their point of view. So, most of it, as related to the other question, is probably coming from a provider, base of data, basically, you know, but then the patient may have some additional things that they would like to have included and communicated to the other healthcare provider. So that's the patient's story. They can tell it in their own words. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You have time for Dave back there?
If it's a very quick one, Dave, yes, but we would actually, we need to switch. The question is, if you make it a quick answer.
So, as you know, I've got a great interest in this because in the U.S., crossing borders means going to a different hospital.
Yes, it does.
Right? And I had an emergency room experience in Las Vegas a year and a half ago at the work group meeting where there I was stressed, having to fill out all this information. Yeah. And what I wanted to have is this QR code that the folks at Washington, state of Washington, are working on. How Epic has expressed interest in supporting IPS, but how far are we from being able to actually show up with a QR code and say, here's an accurate version that doesn't require a clipboard?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. Okay. I don't know how close we are, but I can tell you from what you've seen here and what we're getting a lot closer. So, with Epic rolling it out, next year and all that, we're going to start seeing it. So, I'm excited about that.
Thank you, Rob.